Hello and welcome to the GYDA Talks. And today I am absolutely delighted to have Becky here from Reflect. Hello, Becky.
Hi, Robert.
I always wonder, is it reflect? How do you say it?
I always say reflect, but it's a funny one. We have all different things. When you ring through to someone, you're like, Reflex Digital, and I'm like, no, Reflect Digital. But yeah, reflect.
Yeah, and it's not reflects, it's reflect. Anyhow, absolutely fantastic to have you here. Timestamp's really important about today. We're in April and we are a couple of weeks into COVID-19 and all that has done to everyone. So I think we can't deny that's happened. And I think what's happened is we're in a situation where businesses' vulnerabilities have been exposed. I think that's the politest way of putting it, especially in the agency world. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about how Becky has dealt with that specifically. But first, just can you just introduce yourself and introduce Reflect very quickly about yourselves?
Yeah, so I'm founder and CEO. We've been going nearly 10 years now, and we're a digital marketing agency with a main focus in search and having that underpinned by human behaviour.
Underpinned by human behaviour. What does that mean?
So, well, last year we became part of the Lab group. So Johnny Twos and the team over at Lab with their psychology and behavioural economics team. So we're starting to look a bit more at kind of how can we really understand the intent of what the user searches for, and how can we use that to our advantage to help actually drive people to take the action that our clients want them to take.
Okay, I get that. So I guess the big question is just the warm up to work to April 2020 is what's the couple of sentences description of how was it going up until St. Patrick's Day 2020?
We were flying, and that makes it all the harder, doesn't it? Yeah, we were absolutely flying. We literally, the last couple of years, we've really been building momentum in our growth as an agency. Joining Lab last year was just a fundamental kind of step change again in being able to be introduced to their customers, winning new clients. And in our own right, just the level of leads coming in has been increased. We had a real focus last year on being out and about on the speaker circuit, talking at more events, and all of that's been working. And then March hits.
So I mean, I've found that the last few weeks have been, for want of a better phrase, therapy in some senses, that people are not only telling their story to try and figure out what actually happened but they're also listening really intently to other people's stories to try and understand whether they got it worse or whether they got it better. And there's certainly been a shift from in my conversations from being sometimes being transactional to being far more relationshipy, because we're all kind of going through this together. But what actually happened and how did you respond? I mean, that's the question really.
So we ended up closing the office just before, probably the week before lockdown actually came in, because we had a team member that was showing symptoms. We don't actually think he had it in the end, but we had to put the protection of everyone in place. So we've been working from home definitely a week longer than the whole country has had to work from home. And yeah, it just... At first, it was kind of almost a bit in denial of, is this going to be as bad as it feels like it could be? And things were carrying on that first week or so. But I think then the week lockdown hit, we really started to have clients pausing their budgets and digging their heels in to say, actually, we can't continue right now. And we did the only human thing that we could do, which was say, we completely understand. Let's pause your contract. Let's be quite formal about it, that we do still have a contract here and we do expect you to pick this back up in the future, but we understand that you can't carry on right now with what it was you were doing with us. So yeah, there's been a lot of those conversations. They've slowed up now because I think we've probably covered most of our clients that have been in real kind of hard hit areas.
I mean, have you found that all of your have you found that virtually all the clients have closed, or has it just been the obvious ones like weddings and hotels and restaurants and bars?
Yeah, we're probably about 50% of our retainers have paused. So some of them are still doing some level of business. Some of them are not able to work at all. So we've got clients in hospitality, for example, or one of our biggest clients is a pilot training school. So no one wants to think about being a pilot right now. Yeah, it's really, there's been the real obvious ones that have been hit, and then I guess others have been hit by supply chains being hit. So actually they can stay open and do business, but actually their supply chain can't deliver. So there's no point in them doing paid advertising right now to drive sales when they can't deliver a product. And so it's been an interesting one, and I think we just went into it once we realised how it was starting to go, and that we were coming towards a lockdown. It was just, let's jump on the phone and just openly talk to every customer and just ask them what's going on, what do you expect to happen, what are you preparing for right now, how can we help you?
And I'd be curious, what's your definition of pause? Because different people have a different ideas of. So to my mind, pause means we're not paying at the moment, but we recognise that payments will be outstanding, which we'll pay later. But other people have a definition of pause, which means we're just not paying for a couple of months. So what's your
So
definition of pause?
pause for us is that these months, so April, May, potentially June, but at the moment we're kind of talking April, May to clients, that if they've asked to pause, then we're not doing any work. Although if they do need anything from us, we're here and we can help. We're happy to do kind of strategic talks about how we get them back online, but we're not doing the day-to-day retainer work we would be doing. But that we expect those 2 months to be tacked on to the end of their contract. So if their contract finished in December, it's now going to end in February, for example.
And have you had to, what's the phrase? Have you had to sort of pull in the contractual piece with anyone? In other words, because it's really hard, because there are businesses that clearly can't pay and may not be able to pay for some considerable time. So it's a conundrum about, on the one hand, we're owed this money and they said they were going to pay us. On the other hand, we're human beings, and we're not top of the queue, like the bank and the accountant and everyone else will be ahead of us in the queue. So have you had to kind of get a bit sort of shirty with people?
Not at the moment. I mean, that was part of the starting point of our strategy as well, was to speak to everyone that owed us money, whether it was overdue or was going to become due soon, to just understand, and how is cash. So are you expecting to be able to pay our invoice? Do we? Because I think there's a tendency to be scared of those conversations in normal day-to-day business. It's a bit like, oh, it's a bit awkward. Can you afford to pay my invoice right now? But actually in a time like this, it's like, just be brutally honest with me. Tell me, are you going to be able to pay this invoice or not? Because I need to make plans based on knowing that. I think most of our clients, are comfortable that we'll be seeing that money when we need to see it and when we're expecting to see it. So we didn't have any huge outstanding invoices that would be a real worry to any of our clients either. So we're just monitoring that very closely, though, because actually there was a client we chased the other day, and when we tried to get through to their accounts payable department, they've all been furloughed. So it was like, oh dear, who do we speak to now? Let's find the CEO. And
Beautiful.
yeah, so that's a challenge.
But yeah, but it's I mean, it's a real credit to what you're doing, what you've been doing with clients, that you can have those conversations. Because certainly I've been talking to some agencies who, there's one agency where the agency founder said, I can tell you one thing, and I'm not having any kind of reduction in my dividends. I can tell you that for sure right now. And I've got contracts, and I'm going to hold these contracts up to these people, and they have to, and it just doesn't work. And then there are other people. There was a lovely YouTube video by Ross Tavendale, where he says, and it's in the video, so it's available for everyone to hear, listen. And he says that the first thing he did was freeze his own pay and cash in his pension, in order to make sure that the business could survive, because different people have different priorities, and his priority is the business comes first, and then the business people. and then Ross. And that's his order of thinking about it. And other people think the people come first and then the business and then themselves, and other people think themselves first and other people think the clients first, and then so it's been such a test of what our values are, one.
Yeah.
And more importantly, it's been such a test of when people say we're open, honest and transparent. It's like, okay, so if you are open, honest and transparent, when are you going to tell the people you're going to furlough them?
Yeah.
When are you going to tell the person who runs the department that isn't making any money, which might be video or it might be traditional advertising, whatever? When are you going to tell them that you've decided to make them redundant? Because you ain't being honest, open, and transparent. You're being selectively open, honest, and transparent.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's tough, isn't it? And I think it's never has there been such a time where in the news and the media has there been as much information around something like furloughing, which probably roll back a month, none of us even really knew what that word meant or had ever had to use it in a sentence before. So actually a lot of the team, when we, because we furloughed about a quarter of our team, and as we had those conversations with the team, they were like, oh, I expected you to furlough me. Actually, I would have been worried if you hadn't furloughed me, because they know what's going on in the media, and we've been open and transparent around what was starting to happen with clients and that we were having people to pause. So therefore, actually, they expected it because they want their job to be protected, and they know that actually the only sensible thing right now is, if there's government support there, is to take it so that we can come out of this the agency that went into it.
And what do the non-furloughed people think about working a 40-hour week or a 35-hour week, and their former colleagues are earning just 20% less while doing the gardening?
Yeah, that's a real tough one, isn't it? And I think we've really tried to position it to the whole team that actually on both sides we're taking one for the team, because actually having to not do any work, be stuck in your house, only really meant to be going out for either an hour or so's exercise and to the supermarket, that's actually pretty boring. Like day 1 or 2 and while you're getting the jobs done might be all right, but for a sustained period of a minimum of 3 weeks, actually, I don't think I'd pick that option. I'd start to go out of my mind. So actually, as lovely as it sounds that they can sit and watch Netflix all day, I think they are taking one for the team in that sense. And then on the flip side, those that are being asked to work just as hard as they ever have to deliver the work that needs doing, well, again, they're taking one for the team. They've got to get that work done to protect the relationships that we've got and those clients that are still trusting us to deliver work at this time and are still willing to part with budget in such an uncertain time. We've got to make sure we're delivering 100% for them as we would normally. So I think we've tried to position in that way that everyone realises that this isn't great for anybody. We'd much rather all be back in the office and living life as normal.
And of course, it's also a world defined by the haves and have-nots, like the haves being have children versus have not children, because like the have children have never found it so hard to working from home, and the haves and have-nots on gardens, because like living in a flat is very, very different from having fields outside or whatever it is. So the world has changed. Right, so you spoke with all of your you spoke with all of your clients. You went direct to your clients, and because of your relationships with them, you were able to ask them upfront, "Are we getting the money?"
Yeah, and just to understand what's going on in their business. And I think one of the things, I mean, I had some of these conversations, and then some of our more senior account managers that hold relationships did as well. My point to them was, don't be afraid of asking a question that might end up in the customer saying, I need to pause my budget. Like, yes, that's not the news we want to hear, but we're going to need to hear it if that's what they need to do. So don't be afraid of having that conversation.
I think that's right, and I think it's a tough call because it's, in some senses, you feel like you're almost precipitating it. You're like, oh, now you're here, Becky. Yeah, we have been thinking about knocking it on the head, calling it a day. So yes, we would like to turn off. I actually don't think that's what's normally happening. I actually think that the majority of the time we're getting good, honest conversations. I mean, I'm a believer you get the staff and you get the customers that you deserve, or rather you shouldn't have taken them on in the first place if they were rats. So that's client. So you furloughed a quarter of the business. Does that mean that you've got a quarter of the revenue? Is that fair to say?
Probably. I mean, we're about, so of retainer business, we're about 50% down, but then we've got quite a few bits of project work going on. So we've had a lucky win in that one of our customers, they manufacture hops that go into beers, and they saw that a big part of their industry is the craft industry, and they saw all these breweries were going to really suffer. So they came to us and asked us to build a really quick website that was going to become a directory for how you can get craft beer delivered to your door in this time. So they've actually put quite a bit of money behind building that, first of all, which we turned around in about 3 or 4 days, and then in the marketing and the PR of it. So we've had a real win there of being able to actually replace some budget that was being paused elsewhere. So I'd say we probably are about a quarter down on revenue, but it's an ever-changing beast at the moment.
Yeah, and so how are you dealing with is there a cash flow forecast? Is there several cash flow forecasts? Is it so ridiculous you don't bother doing it, or is it so important you look at it every day? Where are you on this continuum?
So we use Float, which is an amazing piece of software, and it ties in nicely with Xero. So we use that, and in Float you can create scenarios. So I think we've got 3 scenarios running. One that I don't like to look at because that's what was going to happen, and that's quite upsetting. But then we've got kind of where we think we are, and also a kind of worst case scenario. So we did a risk assessment across all of our clients, and there's still some that were in our medium risk that haven't actually paused at the moment. So we're still considering that there's a chance that might happen. And also within that risk assessment, we tried to look at what we thought the impact would be for them as to when they would come back on. So for example, an e-commerce store that's paused just because they can't get their supply chain, the second supply chain comes back, they're going to probably be back to full budget and back as they were. But actually some of our other businesses where it's going to be a slower start to build them back up, they might need another couple of months before they're ready to go back to the full spend they were at. So we've kind of got 2 different risk assessments going on and 2 different cash flow forecasts, and just trying to keep on top of it and keep talking to those customers that owe us money to make sure that's coming and that we don't get forgotten.
I was having a conversation with someone this morning, and he was saying, so tell me, he runs an agency, and he said, so what's happened to everyone's profitability? And it's like, I don't think many people are talking about profitability at the moment. I think the only thing people are talking about is cash flow, because profits are nice to have at the moment. And right now for me, it's really straightforward. Have you got deep enough pockets to survive the next 4 months? Yes or no? Secondly, if you have, in 4 to 6 months' time, as we go into Christmas 2020, have you got a proposition which is relevant and compelling for whatever is going on then? And then if you have got a relevant and compelling proposition to get you through Christmas, what's 2021 going to be like? Because just imagine, imaginary numbers, if you've got £100,000 in the bank, and you're going to burn that and some more getting to Christmas, so you're down to 0 or minus 50, say. If 2021 doesn't deliver, brackets, which I don't think it will, I think 2021 will be 20% for agencies, be 20% down on 2019. Then you're going to get to the end of 2021. You'll be poorer than you are now. You'll have worked your little cotton socks off for 18 months. And for some agencies, it would have made more sense for them to bail out now, even though values are bad. But I keep getting emails from people saying, if you know anyone who's got an agency, be really interested in their book, interested in their people. For some people, it might be worth bailing out now rather than working for 18 months to end up being roughly where they are now, having won back the money that they will have burnt. I mean, how do you? What's your? I mean, it has to be with hands. What's your view of revenues and turnover for the next 18 months?
Yeah, and it's a bit you could do with your crystal ball would be really helpful, wouldn't it, to really know. But I mean, we've said recently, if we were the agency that we were maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we may have struggled at this time to come through it. But I think we're strong now. We've got a really strong core retainer model, which I think will come back. Some of it a bit slower, but I'd hope by the end of the year we should have everyone back online, and we have had some really interesting inquiries over the last couple of weeks, which they're not turning into definites at the moment because I don't think anyone wants to sign a contract and commit to anything. But there is still conversations going on because people have got headspace right now to think about marketing. Right. So I think it's going to all be in that process of lining that work up, staying in contact, being human in this situation, and actually back to an earlier point of those agencies that maybe are holding their contracts to their clients saying you're going to have to stick with it. They're the agencies that are really going to lose out, because right now, out of all of our suppliers, anyone that's not being helpful or human to me, they're going onto a bit of a bad list that I think, well, actually, if I could do without you in my life, then I would, because you're not taking this scenario into account. And this isn't just my business, this is the world right now. And I think so I think it's all about, for me, is building those relationships now, getting closer and stronger to our customers, because actually we're going through something together that we've never had to go through before, and hopefully never will again, and using that as a springboard to grow later on in the year and into next year. So my personal hope is that for us, we'll actually come out of this strong, and that revenues will go back, probably not quite onto the trajectory that we had planned, and definitely not onto our 2021 projections. But I think our 2020 projections might come true in 2021.
But if you look at what happens to economies in recession, if you step back, look at what happens to economies in recession. They do dip, but they don't actually. The year of a recession, the dip isn't that huge on average. I know it's a really dangerous thing to talk about, but the economies tend to only dip by 2 or 3% in growth of GDP, and then in high growth times they tend to grow by 8 or 10%, maybe 15% in exceptional cases. Yeah. So the general trajectory of growth tends to continue. And I suspect that if you look at the 5-year period or the 3-year period, that the growth it'll just have had this very, very nasty dip in it, and will recover because, my son's getting married. He still needs to get married. He can't get married this June, July, I don't think, but he'll get married next year. And therefore those pubs and those taxi firms and those hotels and those caterers and on and on and on, all the people who benefit from that, train services, they'll get that suppressed demand coming up later on. People will still have 21st birthday parties they want to celebrate. People will still celebrate finishing their A-levels at some point. All that stuff's going to happen, maybe not in the same way, but there will be some suppressed demand, which will mean that it'll hopefully loop up and be busy. But it's just, when we're looking at it in such a granular way, it's very different, because I think on balance in this 3-year period, roughly the same number of businesses will go bust, which is 10%, 8.5%, 9% will go bust. It's just an awful lot of them are going to go bust, not now, but in about 6 months' time when they've run out of cash. So I just think sometimes we're just a little bit too granular about it. And just going back to what you were saying about customers, are you? So I know one agency that's taken its whole biz dev team and put them on credit control, credit collection. did you have a biz dev team firstly? And if you did, are they out there looking for work, pitching for work, or do you feel that's a little bit like profiteering? Where's your line on that?
So we've got 2 people that are kind of account managers, account directors that are biz dev as well. We've had pure biz dev people before, and it doesn't work. Like, you need people that really understand what we do to build relationships, and that brings work. And actually, so at the moment they're not out there looking for work per se, but they're out there having those conversations and building relationships and seeing where there's opportunity. Because actually, for every client that's asked to pause, we are still having a conversation about that to say, is that definitely the right thing to do for you right now? For paid search, maybe, but actually SEO is long term. If you've got the cash, don't you want to be ready and in the right positions for when things do come back, for example? So they're not actively I haven't given them a target and said, right, come win this amount of work right now. But they're having the conversations, and conversations ultimately will always lead to business at some point. So it's just that relationship building is carrying on.
Because there are people out there doing this. It's never been a better time to be doing digital marketing, and follow these 10 steps and you'll be richer than your wildest. And I trust they can be seen for what they are, which is snake oil salespeople because clearly it's time for many businesses. It's time to retrench. For many businesses, I think it is. They are about to start a 10 or 12 week rediscovery, rebirth, for want of a better phrase. This is the opportunity for many businesses to create new products and create new services. The last decent recession we had gave us Facebook and Uber. So. Let's hope this recession will generate some new ways of doing things. But it is the time for everyone, including digital agencies, to look at their model of working and say, have we got that right? So I've got a client at the moment who was about to move into an office that took 130 people. They're in an office which doesn't really take 80. And now they realize actually they don't need to do that, because working from home, maybe not full time, maybe not 5 days a week, but working from home is absolutely an option. And they don't need to have what now feels like a really traditional model of having an office with people in it. I mean, it's bizarre how quickly that's happened.
Yeah.
So working from home becomes more normal. Selling online becomes more normal. Now, it's one thing selling a product at £1,000 a month. It's much tougher selling a £100,000 or £200,000 bill online. But that's become much more possible. I can't see that my airport visits will be like what they've been in the past. It's just, yeah. I did my Slovenia gig, which I really miss because it's a 5-star hotel on the coast. It's just the most lovely place, and it's a great gig called In Orbit. Any of you? I
was meant to be there as well.
Oh, there you go. Were you speaking?
Yes, yeah.
Well, there you go. So we ended up, I don't know whether you did, but I ended up, yes, of course, because brain, because I did it last year, and I did it this year, and I ended up doing it. The difference is that this last year I did it and I came off stage. Oh, wonderful. I met some great people, and it was really buzzy, and we went out for a fantastic meal, wonderful fish food, and the fantastic Andraz and all his team. Now that didn't happen this year. This year I sat in my shirt and boxer shorts, so to speak, and gave a presentation, which is really hard because you're just getting nothing coming back, but you believe there's something going on, and it is different. There's no two ways about it. It is different. You don't engage, you don't connect in the same way. Messages may be the same, but that's going to happen more and more, and it's a question of what your model is. So we're thinking for our annual conference this year that we may actually do it online. Why? Because only the people who really want to listen turn up. And I'd rather talk to 30 people who are listening on every word of the speakers than talk to and feed 300 people when only 30 of them are really listening.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think also it will change. I mean, I've had it before where a client's like, I really need you to come tomorrow for a meeting. Can you be here at 12 o'clock tomorrow? And I'm like, oh, I suppose I can squeeze it in. I'll find a way. But actually, I feel like it will be more accepted to now. Yeah, of course I will. I'm going to Zoom in. Is that all right? Kind of thing. And actually, it'll be hard for people to say no to that after what we've been through recently. And that doesn't mean, I mean, I'm struggling a little bit not having the proper face-to-face human contact and meeting people, and because my day job is in and out of meetings, workshops, running around London all day, and I do miss it, but it's not always necessary, and actually it is an added expense, and it's an added couple of hours onto every day that isn't always really needed.
Exactly. So where we are living, hugely we're living in interesting times. Right. So finances, tick. Clients, tick. Staff, tick. How, just out of interest, how have you positioned the future to your staff, or is that kind of self-evident that you don't know? We must sort that.
Part of it is we don't know, but I guess what we've said to them is we spent a week or so looking at what the strategy was going to be and making decisions on what we were going to do about furloughing, etc. And all of that messaging was around, this is protecting us so that we are all back together at the end of this and can pick back up where we were and start to grow again and start to get back to what was business as usual. So yeah, I think we're just trying to be really open and honest. We always are with our team. I think I'd always rather let them know what's going on and leave nothing to surprise. And then we're just doing tons of initiatives at the moment, the same as I think most businesses are, especially agencies, all your online pub quizzes and lunchtime yoga sessions and all the things that just try and help us still feel like we're connected to our team.
But it has, I mean, one of the things about this time is that I've started doing yoga again, and it's amazing. I mean, it's like, I think when I last did it properly was when I was a student with long hair and thought it was a cool thing to do. And now I feel like I'm an executive de-stressing. But it is stunning that we do things in different ways. I haven't slept in my own bed for 30 consecutive nights for ever. I've always been on trains and planes and hotels, and it's like, oh, I'm in the same place next to the same person. Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Not that I'm not normally next to the same person. Oh.
I did think you were digging a hole there. I wasn't
I
going to
know.
go.
I think I'll just keep on talking. You talk a bit about obviously this relationship with Lab has impacted on the business. Could you just kind of fill us in a bit on what because it sounds like that is a clear differentiator where everyone stands up and says, hello, we're a performance agency, we do SEO and PPC, and there are our bean bags, and there's our free ping pong table, and we've even got our Google Water. So
performance agencies well.
So and that sounds like it's a real differentiator. So could you just talk a bit about that?
Yeah, 100%. So the deal went through last September with Lab, and we got to spend quite a bit of time, obviously ahead of that, getting to know each other, but also starting to look at what we would be able to do. And I think
what was the deal? Is the deal a joint venture or a partnership?
They're actually part of Lab, so they purchased part of our agency, and we now sit within the Lab group. We are agency, well, we're not quite agency one, Lab is agency one. We're agency 2 into the group, with more to follow. Obviously, this year might have scuppered some of the plans, or maybe actually enhanced some of the plans. I don't yet to know yet. But yeah, so we are now part of them as an agency. So Paul and I, so my husband and business partner, are still very much running Reflect, but sitting under that umbrella group of Lab. And that meant that our whole team got trained in psychology and behavioral economics. So one of the things that Lab do really well is translate all that great stuff that you can go and read books about, etc. But they've actually turned it into models that you can use in digital marketing and in kind of UX, and they've been on that journey. So I think there's more and more kind of psychology based agencies popping up, or people saying it's something that they've got a skill in. But I think actually Lab have really spent that kind of 5 years or so building that and turning it into models that work, because it's quite easy to go, oh, it sounds amazing, and oh, we could use this, and then you go, oh yeah, but how do we actually use it, and how do you also sell it to a client? I think Daryl from Lab always says when he first started kind of talking to clients about neuroscience, they'd sit there in the meeting and you'd see they were so involved and excited, and then you'd be like, right, do you want to buy it? And they'd be like, no, I don't know if I do, because it wasn't productized enough and it wasn't clear. It sounds really good, but how do we turn it into something? And that's what they've spent 5 years working on, and we've been able to now reap the rewards of that, but also start to take it into a new area. So they've never done search before, so we're now looking at it from SEO and paid search to see how do we take the models they've built and how do we build on those and turn them in more into our products. So that's this year, one of our big focus from our kind of January vision setting was innovating and starting to use this human behavior idea. So we're trying to keep that going now, while we've got a bit of more spare time as well, to see what more can we do with what we've done already.
But your furloughed people can be trained. That's permitted. So you can give them 37 hours a week of voluntary training to do.
Exactly.
So yeah, you're going to come out fitter.
Yeah.
So you can train your SEO. I mean, I know it's a big leap, but you can show your SEO people how to do PPC and vice versa. Heaven forbid they should cross that abyss. And I think that's spot on, because I think that, you know, one of the things that's missing from the client point of view is that, you know, especially PPC was sold as, you can see the ROI clear as day, and of course that's obviously kind of been disproved, I would argue, or it's being challenged. But it goes the extra step, because clearly there isn't a 3-step matrix, 3-letter mnemonic, whatever, to make this stuff work. And it's very difficult to explain what makes it work and what doesn't work. And there is theory and there is research about how people respond to different stimuli and what order and speed and time and volume of stimulus in what format generates what kind of response and so on. So brilliant, love it.
Yes, it's such exciting times, and I think we don't even 100% know where we're going to go with it yet. We've got ideas on what we're testing and what we're working on, but I think that is exciting, and I think there's going to be lots of content to come out later this year on what we're doing. So definitely watch this space.
So 2 questions, and you don't know the answer to either of them. What do you think the agency will look like in 3 months' time? And what do you think the agency will look like in 12 months' time? What's going to change?
So 3 months, I like to hope we'll be back working together in an office, but unknown. But that would be my hope, that we're back together and back starting, because we've always allowed people to work from home, but actually we have such a collaborative nature, because at our core we do still have a full service nature. We've got really strong developers, really strong designers, and then about 65% of the business is the search side. We do collaborate and we work really closely together. So as much as Slack and Zoom are doing a great job for us at the moment, it's not the same as being in that office together. And we moved last November into beautiful new offices that everyone loves so much. And I think, my hope is in 3 months we're back together. I think I'd hope the majority of our retainers are back on, but I think there'll be some that are still not ready to come back because their businesses won't be there yet. But we'll be talking to them and be trying to help them think about their messaging, because some of them will need to change their tact and think again about how to, for example, the pilot training. You can't then just straight away when flights start happening again say, right, want to be a pilot. You've actually got a bit of damage control to do there to make that sexy again, because even for youngsters that aren't day to day in the business world that we're in, no one can escape knowing how hard hit pilots and airlines have been throughout this period. So it's there's going to be a lot of work to do there, I think, but hopefully some of the leads that have been coming in are going to start to be ready to turn around. So I'm quite optimistic that in 3 months time we'll be starting to find our feet again and starting to see that revenue coming back up. And then 12 months, well, yeah, I hope that it's more of the same. I am feeling optimistic, and I hope I'm right, because it's much nicer than the other option of it not being so good. But I think there will be changes across the industry though, and I think especially those businesses that have never been willing to work from home, it's so interesting to see how they've been forced to, and it will be interesting to see how that changes them going forward, and actually if it pushes them a bit more towards digital in other ways, and if that brings us more opportunity. So yeah, I think it's very much watch this space on that and see, but being ready for it and just trying to just watch cash until then as well.
Yeah. And what's next for Becky?
Well, I'm finding it weird at the moment, because I think I said earlier, my day-to-day job doesn't overly exist anymore. This running around and running workshops, and I'm doing some of that remotely, but it's not of the volume. So I'm taking time at the moment to read and to put my head into some of the strategy stuff that we don't get time to do. I mean, I have found myself saying before, and I feel like I could have jinxed this scenario. I feel like I said earlier this year, I wish I had some time to pause for a minute. And here it is. So I'm trying to make the most of being a bit quieter to have some headspace to think. And then the hope is that later this year we can get back to being out and about, talking to people, releasing some of the ideas and the content that we've got, having actually done some tests with it as well, back on the speaking circuit and sharing some of our knowledge. I mean, I absolutely love being out and about and sharing what we're doing, and so that's where I hope to be.
Brilliant. I love it. Absolutely love it. So finally, this is always a tricky one. I mean, do you have so people are always, I mean, one of the reasons that people listen to these interviews is they're trying to figure out what your secret sauce is, in a way, and if you told them it wouldn't be secret, or maybe it would still be secret because they're not you and they can't apply it. But have you got any kind of top tips or top hints or kind of beliefs that you think other agency owners, but only the ones listening, should be taking on board?
I think being human is the most important thing, and being authentic, be that with your team, with your clients. I think more than ever now, it feels like everyone has permission to do that. But I think we always have permission to be human and be authentic and have all these honest conversations and share how we're feeling. So for me, that's a big part of the strength of our agency. We share, we talk, we always check in, and that's not a check-in as how's work going. It's also a check-in, what's going on at home? How are things? Like being open. And I think also just for now, taking time to think about yourself and get a good routine while you're stuck at home. So I'm exercising every morning, I'm doing yoga as well, and just think about what's going to be good for your mental health, because most agency owners won't be doing their normal job at the moment. Some of the team are actually lucky, they've just moved their normal job to home, but many of us are doing things that aren't on normal day to day, and we've lost part of that. So finding time to be okay with that, and to find other things that might not feel like work normally. Sitting reading a book, that feels like a leisurely thing, but actually if you're reading the right stuff and you're putting your mind to it, you're helping yourself and you're helping your future self and the future business. So yeah, take that time.
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Becky, for being our guest in these interesting times. It's been a week where I think I've been on Zoom from 7 in the morning till 9 at night, and to suddenly be doing a formal interview, formaler interview is just one-to-one is quite bizarre. So thank you very, very much indeed for being our guest. That's been an absolutely brilliant 45 minutes. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.